Welcome, everyone, to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin. I'm here with Coach Katie, and today's episode is 110. And we are coming to you today from a little bit of a coach's corner perspective. It's been a while since we've done one of these episodes, and so we wanted to dial it back and maybe get a little bit more vulnerable, a little personal this time, and bring to you this idea of what to do after a disappointing race or event. It may not be that your expectations didn't get met, because you can. I've talked with athletes where they've had a quote unquote disappointing event where it was a PR, and so it just didn't materialize the way that they envisioned it would, like the movie that played in their mind on how the day would go. And so sometimes you have to separate those expectations from performance. But regardless of what the source is for this so-called disappointment, what do you do next? How do you recover from that? How do you bounce back? What should you start to consider? I've had many conversations with athletes on the revenge race. I'm seeking redemption, and so I want to go back and give it another shot at a different course. I've done it myself, so I understand the mindset behind it. I still have races that are on my redemption list to do, and they're still there. So we wanted to talk to you today, because if you've done this long enough, you're going to have one of these races that happen. So whether, heaven forbid, it's like a DNF or a DNS where you just did not even start, heaven forbid it's one of those. But there's going to come a time where your expectations aren't met, or you felt that the performance that you got out of your event was not consistent with your true potential. So how do you recover from that? How do you look deeper inside? How do you analyze it? And so let's kick this thing off. So Katie, this was kind of the brainchild of Katie.
Yeah.
So Katie came up with this topic. So I'm
Well,
going to let her kind of take over a little bit more. And Katie, kind of talk us
Great.
through this
Yeah.
introduction.
Well, I'll explain what I mean, if people were listening to my Road to Grandma's, they would understand my recap of the race. And I wouldn't call it, like, I wouldn't say I was necessarily disappointed in the fact that I was, like, devastated or something, where I'm like this, I was actually just the way it unfolded and how I just had hung on in the end and finished, and actually finishing in that day was just going to be the hardest part of the whole thing, is just trying to get to the finish line. And I'm very proud of myself for that, because there were several times along the way that I thought about not finishing. And I've had thoughts like that are very, just because I'm just uncomfortable, or I have those moments. And there was like maybe the last 8 miles of that race, the entire time I was thinking about it just about. So it was different in that way. And just finishing and getting the medal and the shirt was a big deal to me. But I am disappointed in, that it wasn't what I set out to accomplish. So there's, I guess, I don't know if I would call it like disappointment, or just like, okay, this didn't go the way I thought. So that's kind of what was the reason I wanted to talk today about that, or bring it up, because I think almost every endurance athlete has experienced it, unless you're like a brand new athlete, maybe when, you haven't had, unfortunately it probably will happen to you the longer you're in
Yeah.
racing. But even a light elite marathoners, even, you see that where sometimes they don't finish, or they have a disappointing race. I mean, it happens. Olympians, even the last time I watched, for the last Olympics, the marathon to qualify, the women's marathon to qualify for the event, there were people, I was disappointed, that they didn't get the top 3 spots to make it. So, that
Yeah.
sort of, there's always, for every athlete, there's some level of disappointment. And so I was thinking this would be a good topic to kind of talk about, how we process it, what are some things you might want to consider afterwards, and should we even sign up? Is it even a good idea to sign up for a revenge race, or is that maybe setting yourself up for more disappointment? What are our thoughts around that? And then I'm also happy to kind of explain where I'm at and kind of how I've processed the race and what I'm doing now. So kind of that personal piece of it. But that's kind of what the inspiration, I suppose, for this was my own
Yeah.
personal experience recently. So yeah, I mean, when was your like what I'm curious, Justin, you remember like when was your last disappointing rate where you were truly disappointed? Is it, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
somewhere.
I can tell you the most recent one was Florida 70.3. I mean, so both of us have had these episodes in the podcast. So if you go back and you check out Katie's Road to Grandma's race recap, which I'm scrolling through my handy dandy spreadsheet. So that's episode 104. So if you go back and check that out, you can also go back and listen to my race debrief for Ironman Florida 70.3, which was episode 53. So you can kind of, I think, kind of both of those episodes really tie into this topic pretty well. Because I think both of us had our expectations not met. I mean,
Well, now we're
I
gonna have
can,
to do another like one and hopefully our like another series of these
yeah,
race topics or race lead ups and hopefully it'll go better because we both had
hopefully
hopefully
it's
that's
got
the
to
case.
eventually like fall into place. But
I hope so.
I mean, for mine with Florida, things were going really, really well until like 3 weeks before the race, and I came down with that post-tibial tendonitis, and I was on crutches all the way up and effectively until the day before the race. I mean, I still couldn't walk through the expo the day before very well. So, it's just after, during that race really broke me
Mm.
to the point where it's just like I said I don't know if I have this in me, and I've been doing this for a long time, and I've gotten through some really hard races, but that one had me crying, out on the course, where it's just
Mm.
like I don't know, I can't do this. So I spent a lot of time praying in on that half marathon, and I was like,
Oh,
I can't do this. The only way that I'm going to cross through this finish line is if God allows me to do this, and basically carries me across this line, because I was in so much pain. And I would also say, was it Ironman North Carolina 70.3? It was my last 70.3 before the Florida one, and it was right before I took 4 years off of the sport to repair some damage that's been done. I had a torn rotator cuff, torn bicep tendon, pretty bad tendonitis in my elbow, so it affected my swimming. And that's my redemption race, and that's what I'm working really, really hard for right now to try and get back to. But Florida was just an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. It was a free race that was offered to me from Ironman, and I had no plans on racing it. And I was like, well, I guess this is what I'm doing.
right.
And I can say that I spent probably a couple days mentally walking through that race to try and figure out what I wanted to do next. I do know that this sport is kind of in my blood, where it's a major piece of me, and so I still have goals of getting back to long course triathlon, where I want to do another full Ironman, and I'm not ready to give that up yet. But I'll say, maybe the day of the race, like race day, or maybe the day after, I didn't want to do that anymore. So I had changed my mind. I was like, I don't want to do a full. I don't even want to do a half. And I regret signing up for the sprint and Olympic that I've already signed up for next year. And
Wow.
but those races, I trained well and recovered well from Florida, and made the podium to both of the races that I regretted signing up for. So I've had a successful year so far. And sometimes it just takes time,
Mhm.
to kind of
Yeah.
walk through that process. And so if you go back, and I also want to bring people's attention, it was the first Coach's Corner episode that we did. And so it's episode 12, way back in the library. It talks about the physical, mental, and emotional recovery post race. And we talked about, there was a part of that discussion where we talked about the grieving process, and you get the
Mhm.
Ironman blues or whatever. Basically, you can, I think it's relevant for the marathon as well. There's a grieving process that we have to go through for the end of the process that we went to get to race day. So race day is just one day, but we spend months preparing for that one day. And then the day after the race, you're left with just the memory of how things went, whether those are good memories, whether they're bad memories. And so I believe that there is a true grieving process that has to take place post race, that you need time to
Well, yeah,
process that.
even if
So
it's a good race, I think there's like
even
a
if it's a good one,
yeah,
yes,
like
I
there's
think you still need that time.
there might be a little bit more to process
Yeah.
potentially in like a difficult race, but either way, there is that little bit of okay, well, now I've done this, like now what? And, kind of grieving. I mean, I think there's that, but it's kind of a mixed emotion too, because for the
Mm,
marathon, after this marathon, I was relieved. To be honest,
yeah.
I was like, all right, like that's, this was hard. I struggled a little more in this whole buildup because I think really because of the illness I got, it just seemed, especially towards the end of the last 8 weeks, I just had so many struggles just trying to get back to where I was that I was almost just had a sense of real like relief that it was over, that it was like I did it. I've had more of a grieving process before with other races. This particular one, I think I was just like, I'm ready to be, I need a break
Hmm.
from this. So I was very ready and it was very nice to have some distractions and being with family and be traveling and stuff because I didn't even honestly have any desire or think about really wanting to go for a run for like that entire week, which is a good sign that I was ready to be done, So I think it
Yeah.
depends. Like, I think how much you are in that process of grieving really depends a little bit on, you know, how hard the whole process was and how ready you were to be just needing a break. I agree. I don't know.
I
I
like
can't
that
say
you,
really
yeah,
grieving.
I like that you brought up the idea that when you said even the week after the race, I had no desire to run.
Mhm.
I think that as endurance athletes and A-type personality people, that is something that you have to listen to. I've talked with a whole bunch of different athletes where they come to me and they said, I had a race, but I'm finding it hard to get my motivation back to start training again. Um, not necessarily just a race, but just to implement some kind of structure and to start training again. I think those are valuable signals. I think that the mind and the body are sending you that you have to listen to. Um, I know that I finished races where 3 days later I was chomping at the bit to start
Mhm.
training again,
I have
and I
to, yeah.
think that's valuable. Now people are going to say, well, you need time to recover because that happened to have been I think that was Ironman Louisville where I was like 3 days post race, and I was like, okay, coach, I'm ready to kick things off again. And he put me on a trainer with some threshold intervals, and I said a lot of bad things about him during that session.
Yeah.
I wasn't physically ready for it, but I was mentally prepared and ready to jump back
And jumping, yeah,
into training.
that's how I was
So,
after my New York City marathon, because I did jump right back into another marathon, but in that instance, it was like and I wasn't even disappointed with that race. I just was like, I'm still excited. There was almost like a grieving the thought of not training anymore, the thought of not having that process. So I was so into the process of training for New York City. The thought of stopping, I wasn't ready. That's like that grief you're talking about, that like not wanting to
mhm,
be done. That happened in that race. But I was able to build that, like, still being hungry
mhm,
into another build for a marathon 6 weeks later. Arguably, that would maybe isn't smart, to do that. But, and then I ended up getting the stomach bug, so maybe it wasn't as had I not gotten that, though, I think I would have been ready. Like, it would have been a pretty good race, I think. It's just like but I was ready. This time was very different. The
yeah,
thought of even signing up for another marathon was, um not appealing. I'm like, I'm not doing this
mhm,
again for a while. Like, I need a break. And so listening to that, and I mean, it's a thing though. Like, I process through a lot of thoughts, and I think it's like you have to kind of really be in tune because that sort of revenge race. Maybe I'm gonna share a little bit more about that, but
mhm,
it's like sometimes I think you can use if you're feeling what you're saying, like you're chomping at the bit to get back to training, you're truly like really disappointed you don't get to continue with the process. Like you're actually truly like grieving it. Like I'm like 3 days in after the race and you're like ready to go again and you're like I just want to continue. I've just been enjoying this so much. Like maybe you can do that, but really listening, because I think even when I was in my post grandma's marathon, I did have thoughts like that. Like, what if I just sign up again for something in the fall? I can like prove that I can do this again and like prove that I was capable of this. And so I think it's like differentiating sometimes between just those thoughts coming on because you're angry about a
Hmm.
little bit angry about how it went because in maybe that disappointment and being like, I'm gonna like sign up because I'm gonna prove that I can do it, but you're not truly into it. And then because you're also having there's this other conflicting thing that was happening with me was I truly was like not wanting to run. I was like not even missing it.
Yeah.
And even 3 weeks in, I mean, now I'm maybe 4 weeks out, something like that, maybe more. I don't know. It's like I'm finally ready, kind of ready to start actually training again. Like I've been kind of running and stuff, but this is where I'm like, okay, I'm kind of ready to start another training cycle of some sort for some. It may not be a marathon, but you just have to. There's
Yeah.
sometimes lots of emotions and lots of things you're processing through and trying to really decipher like I want to do like if you have that urge to sign up for something because you're angry or you're whatever and you're truly not feeling like ready though, like to really listen because you can maybe uh I've known plenty of people or maybe kind of experienced this a little bit where I've signed up for something because I am angry and want a different result, but I haven't actually thought about the fact that I have to get back at it.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not ready to do that. I just want the outcome, but maybe I'm not ready for the process. So anyway, just
No, I
yeah.
like that you brought. I like that the way that you described it because on one hand you said, I'm signing up for another race because I want to prove that I'm capable," versus I'm signing up for a race because I'm grieving the process. I think that's the distinction
Or you're breathing
that
the process and you're truly like ready to
and
get
you're
you're like
ready to get back and
you're
you
just
want the
chomping at the bit.
process.
Like you're like, I just
Yeah.
loved this.
So
I was so happy. I was so content in the process and I'm missing this. And you're ready. You're like just looking at your shoes and you're like, gosh, I just want to get back out there. I'm ready to go versus I'm angry that didn't go well. I'm disappointed. I'm gonna sign up for something in, whatever the fall or, whatever 6 months from now to like prove or whatever, 6 weeks, whatever it is, like to prove that I can do it. But your desire to go out there and put your shoes on and run is not very like you're
Mhm.
like, oh, I just really don't want to go though. Like I need more of a break. Then it's probably I would listen to that what your body's actually telling you versus what your mind is trying to
Yeah.
convince you. Sometimes is
I think
tuning in with your body a little more. Yeah.
Yeah, the best way that I can describe it is it's more of like a heart posture kind of thing. Where it's
Yeah.
just, I mean, if you're signing up for another race just to prove that you can do it or you didn't like the outcome that you got, there's nothing that says that this race that you've now signed up for as your quote unquote redemption race is going to give you the opportunity to prove the fitness that you have because there's so many things that are like outside of our control on
Mhm.
race day. So if you're chasing performance or you're chasing proof that you're capable of achieving something, I think that sets people up more for just more disappointment because rarely does that second race live up to the expectations that you have when you clicked on that registration button to chase something that you think that you're capable of achieving. Now, the athletes that I've worked with have seen more success where they've had a race. It may not have gone like they wanted it to, or there's things that didn't go well, but there are things that did go well and they're kind of disappointed and they sign up for another race simply because they want to continue the process and they're not chasing performance, but they're chasing the evolution of
Mhm.
themselves as an athlete. They tend to have more success than those who chase proof, validation, or revenge or just being able to observe their athletic potential. I
Mhm.
think that first group tends to have more success and they're in the sport longer than those in the second. That's been my experience.
Yeah. And I think kind of looking back with the marathon, I think when I did sign up for like that Tucson after New York City, I did want the goal, but I was truly excited to get back to the process.
Yeah, that's the
Whereas,
difference.
yeah, and then I think in Vermont training for that, I was still enjoying the process. I think where things broke down for me a little bit with grandmas was after I got sick, I was so worried about the outcome and what the illness had done to my fitness. I was like
Hmm.
obsessive obsessive about that, and it started to become like not so fun for me anymore. Like because I was so almost upset and disappointed with the fact that that had happened, and it truly did impact me, and I kind of like maybe should have pivoted, I think. And this is something I talk about in my recap of like there were so many signs of like this is just you just need to give your body more time, and I was pushing through workouts and doing things when I should have just been like listening, and then realizing a couple weeks in after even starting to try to run again that it wasn't going to bounce back. Like my body was still like just had really taken me down. And I think that sometimes we sometimes get those illnesses, and I just wasn't bouncing back like I was hoping. And at that point to be like, okay, I want to still enjoy this. And so maybe that PR goal is out of the window. Cause I think if that had happened and I'd reset my goal, I would have been able to go into grandma's and be like, I have a different goal. And then I would maybe would have
Hmm.
not gone out so fast, and maybe it would have been a slower the same time, maybe a little faster because I would have paced it better, and I would have maybe enjoyed it, or it would have been a little bit less of a grind and so painful at the end. And so, I think that's when I stopped enjoying the process, I think. And I was just trying to grind myself back into shape. It wasn't fun anymore. And so I think that sometimes, and realizing that now, being like, okay, this is why I'm taking such a break from the marathon, because I do think if it's all outcome oriented and you're just pushing yourself to do something because you want to achieve something and you're no longer enjoying the day to day process of it and the training that goes into it, I don't think you're going to be able to have longevity in the sport because you're just going to burn out. Like I basically burnt myself out because
Yeah.
I'm experiencing the aftermath of that burnout, not wanting to run and then trying to get back into running when I got back. And then of course it's hot, so that makes it hard too because you don't enjoy running in the heat. But it's like I'm just now kind of like, okay, I kind of am ready to start. I'm not pushing myself just to go out and do a little bit of running because I know I need to stay fit. Now I'm like, okay, I'm kind of engaging into it again. But like I said, it's a month out. So I really had some major burnout, I think, from that process. The process, the last 8 or 9 weeks is kind of my vulnerability. But I do think that's where when you start to lose interest in the process, whether, even during the marathon build, I think that, sometimes just kind of listening to that and figuring out how to revamp your goal or revamp your training a little bit to re-engage or whatever it is. But because I think when you have that disappointing race, afterwards, you might kind of experience a little bit of that um, burnout. And then some people, I think, especially if they're newer, maybe wouldn't want to go back to it at all. Like, oh, well, that wasn't fun. I don't want to do this anymore. And then they don't stay with it.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right.
One thing that I did want to bring up is, well, and ask you a question. Um, after you got sick and you had recovered from the flu, do you feel that there was a bit of panic training that was taking place to where you were so committed to the outcome and the sickness was definitely a setback? Do you feel that you were too committed to the outcome that actually caused you to kind of go into like this panic training mode? And ultimately, do you think that affected your race, or at least the execution of your race?
I think so. I think I missed so many workouts that I was like, I can't miss any more. And so when my
Mm,
body would say, yeah, I'm tired, or the workouts weren't going well, I wasn't able to like adapt to it as well. I was trying to, but like a little bit, like in my train, but I'm like, oh, I already missed like 2 weeks, 3 weeks worth of like some key workouts. So that I think caused me a panic. Yeah, like this isn't what I had planned. This is,
Hmm.
as an A-type person, like this isn't going well. And instead of listening and being like, okay, maybe myself, maybe not jumping back into trying to get back to like 70-mile weeks where I was, maybe being like, okay, this maybe not possible to do the mileage like I was doing. So maybe cutting back on that a little bit and adjusting some of my training counts a little bit better to listen to my body, because I think there was, yeah, it was just like, I've got to get back to where I was as soon as I can, but my body wasn't ready. And so I was pushing myself. So there may have been even an aspect there of a little bit of overtraining, like pushing myself almost too much into that fatigue and overtraining. And I don't think I didn't notice it like as I was tapering, like I did when I truly had overtraining syndrome, because I was feeling pretty good the days up to the race. I didn't sleep very well the few nights before, which has been kind of a constant problem, but it was for slightly different reason, but it was, so that could have affected it, but wasn't like I was, like, in the weeks, like, the taper, I wasn't like, "Oh, I feel awful, like, this isn't good," because
Hmm.
I did have several times I was like, "I'm feeling pretty good." So, I don't know, like, but I do think you're right. I think it was probably just trying to get back too soon and then maybe doing a little bit of almost, like, putting where I wasn't really, where if I just kinda taken it easier and not pushed myself so hard, would I have been able to recover a little bit better in those workouts in between and not push, like, maybe I just was pushing so hard I wasn't actually gaining fitness. I was just losing even more fitness.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, but that's probably part of it. And I talked a little bit about this in that when I was talking about kind of, having setbacks. Like, I think that's a common thing for people to be like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta kinda make up." And I definitely experienced it there. And that's
Yeah.
actually the first time that I can remember in any major marathon build, you know, maybe because I'm getting older, maybe because of some of the factors and stress leading into that, but it was like the first time I've had such a major setback with with injury or illness.
Right.
So I don't think I never had experienced that before. This is like you kind of live and learn sort of situation. Now looking back, it's like kind of doing that like analysis after the race, which I kind of let myself have like the rest of the day. I try not to think about it too much like that day after. And I kind of let myself have a day or two. And I really started processing it probably like Monday actually, because I knew I had my Road to Grandma's recap that I wanted to record. So I really kind of processed it a little bit Sunday on our drive when we were driving, and then Monday. But I kind of think like, I don't know, it's yeah, I don't know. I just think it's kind of looking at it like, okay, I didn't I just think it's just lack of experience, a little bit of like, okay, this is, yeah, there's like, I think the illness was kind of the major breaking point, and I think there are other factors, but, like, sea level, running at sea level for 2 weeks before, I definitely lost, and probably even with the heat training, some of my altitude benefit. I think that's a big factor, is just maybe not my usual pre-race, like, being in a like, traveling. But I think the major thing for me was that, illness and then not really, like, pivoting or afterwards, and that's fine. But I think if I'd pivoted, I might have been able to like just be like, I'm gonna enjoy this race. I'm just gonna like change my goal and then maybe sign up for a fall race and then still been enjoying the process and been like, okay, I can let this one be what it is. And maybe, but now I pushed myself so hard. I was like, I'm not doing another marathon for another year, at least,
Yeah.
So I think that's
So I
something.
know, yeah. So the next question that I would have for you is, let's take off your athlete hat and put on your coach's hat. And this is something that I have to do with myself a lot as well. If you were talking to the athlete in this situation, what would you tell them in that
After
circumstance?
the fact or like during?
No, they've gotten sick and they've lost some training time,
Mhm.
and you're starting to sense that there's a little bit of panic in their tone. I
Right.
sensed it when I would talk with you,
Yeah,
and I
I was
even
panicked.
even like through the text messages that we would have, I could sense like there was a little bit of panic and
Yeah.
anxiety. And I tried to reassure you. I was just like, well, we don't lose fitness that quickly. And so I was trying to encourage a little bit, so to kind of stave off that panic feeling that I was getting from you.
Mhm.
And it's common. I get it from athletes that I talk with as well. So what would you tell your athlete in that situation?
Yeah, I think I would probably tell them exactly what you were trying to tell me is like, and that's just where I think like I realize now like I am really good. Like I think when things are going well, I'm pretty good about, like, pivoting my workouts because I know a missed workout isn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at pivoting, like, 'cause I'm not too worried, but I think in this sense, where I'd lost so much, I stopped thinking like a coach, and this is like you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking like a coach anymore, and I self-coach, and so I think this is a perfect example of where having a coach might be helpful, like I'm gonna change the way I do it next time with the trainings. I think that's where it's so hard to self-coach because sometimes we lose sight of the we don't have the coaching hat anymore, you know, and I think I kinda
Right.
lost that. I was in that panic mode, just like you're saying, and now looking back, I can see that, and I can go back to the training and some of the things I was, like, thinking and doing was irrational a little bit. Um, and so if it were me, like, as a coach, yeah, I would have been like, you need to listen to your body. We're going to pivot. We're going to have to like change some of these workouts. We're going to have to adjust and you don't lose fitness, kind of that little reminder and like being able to be that person's sense of reason a little bit and like
Hmm.
setting the workouts and giving that reassurance as an athlete. Usually you kind of trust in the coach, to make those decisions for you in a way. And hopefully they're still, putting that trust in you. So I think if I'd had a coach, I would have been able to be like, okay, I'm going to trust this person. I'm going to do what they're saying. You know what I mean? Because I
Yeah.
also am not the type of person that would probably go out and do my own things necessarily. To have had somebody taking the control away from me a little bit in that moment would have probably been better for me in that moment. It's just interesting because normally I think I do pretty well, but that was just an instance where it kind of went off the rails, I think, where I
Mm.
did lose that. And I think I remember like thinking that a little bit, like somehow I'm exempt. Like I can do this to myself and it's going to be okay. I'm going to be able to get myself back there and just kind of losing all that rationality. So it's interesting. And this is exactly I think like we'll talk a little bit about how I'm gonna kind of approach the marathon differently next time. Because I'm not gonna go into it the same. That way if things like this happen, I don't really freak out. Somebody who thinks they can self-coach or follow like a program and then things kind of go off the rails and they have this tendency to then freak out and, try to make up all the workouts or continue, go jump right back in without completely being recovered. I think that having a coach in that sense might be a good plan because if someone's listening to this and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this has happened to me a lot. I've done that same exact thing." Yeah, I mean, I did it and I am someone that coaches other people and I myself struggled with that. So you can only imagine how, almost anybody might do the same thing. So anyway, it's a challenge.
It's really hard. It's really hard to wear the athlete hat and the coaching hat. I mean, so,
Mhm.
you know,
It
I
is.
don't
It's hard.
I'm a lot better. I'm a lot better at like coaching somebody else than I am like coaching
Mhm.
myself. So,
I think I'm maybe beginning
um
to realize that a little bit myself. Like, if things are, like I said, if things are going well, I'm fine because I know I put the workouts together. But it's almost as if when things come totally unhinged, if something happens, it's like I had a really hard time pivoting in that
yeah.
moment and
Which
and
makes
like
sense
even letting
because
go.
yeah, the way that I think about it is that if training is going well, I think of it like a bank account. So if things are going well, you're making regular deposits into this bank account. And so if like one or two sessions don't go well, you feel okay because you've been just stockpiling cash this whole time. And you know that like one or two, subpar workouts or like a missed session here and there is not going to affect the overall balance of the account. So you don't get concerned. But if you make a huge withdrawal from that bank account, like 2 weeks of missed training from a sickness, then it makes sense that once you kind of get back to it, you look at the balance that's in that account and it's a lot lower than what you would like to see. So I think you tend to take on more risk because of that situation. And uh, I think it's common. I mean, I like it that I don't want to say I like it that you experienced this, but I think it's valuable because the people that are listening to us know that we're fairly experienced athletes. We've been doing this for a long time. We're both coaches. And so the same stuff that affects a new person or just like an athlete affects us as well. And so we're no different than anybody else that's in this sport. We have the same setbacks. We have the same situations that we have to take care of, illnesses and recoveries and injuries. I mean, we don't get it right all the time. And we're lucky every once in a while for things to go well, just like anybody else. So
Right,
there's
absolutely.
nothing special.
And I really think this is like not only a learning opportunity for me and my own training, but as I'm working with other individuals who go through that, like to kind of
Yeah.
know what that experience is like and to help them because I obviously didn't approach it right. But now, like, I've kind of, with the marathon, it was like, oh, well, it's given me a lot of time to reflect on that. Had the marathon gone great, I don't think, and I don't know if it would have, but because of it, but, like, if it had, I don't know if I would have had time to really reflect on that, so much and kind of w how that illness kind of it just everything sort of changed, in terms of
Yeah.
my enjoyment of the process and, I think probably because I was so panicky, it wasn't enjoyable anymore, and, like, how to maybe shift,
Yeah.
um and almost put someone at ease a little bit, but also like recognizing that sometimes we do have to let go of the outcome and
Yeah.
kind of come up, and like maybe even going to a little bit of a different, like, okay, we're not going to focus so much on pace, focusing more on like RPE and then kind of at some point sort of looking at where those paces are with that. So I wasn't pushing myself so hard to hit certain paces that I felt like I needed to hit in order to get this marathon time.
Yeah.
And wasn't able to hit those paces like after I got sick, um, like I was before. And I was struggling a lot. And so, yeah, I might not have lost so much fitness, but somehow it took me a lot to get back to where I was before. And maybe if I had just kind of like gone by a different metric and tried to let go of the paces a little bit, it's hard to say in retrospect, but I think I would have approached it differently. And now knowing that, I think then kind of applying how I would maybe approach it differently for myself, how I might approach it differently for another athlete going through the same thing and say like, okay, we're not going to let go of the outcome completely, but we might have to, but let's just try to do the workouts and focus more on how they feel versus like a specific time you're supposed to achieve
Yeah.
and do it by RPE for a while. And then, we'll kind of come back and analyze how things are going and then, sort of make that decision about whether that race goal needs to be adjusted or not, something like that instead of like being so determined, like, so determined that I was going to like hit these paces and get this goal time. Um, and not even letting myself kind of like, okay, is this even feasible? I don't know. So I think I would approach it, that whole scenario differently for myself maybe next time, but also for athletes I work with. And then I do think, yeah, it does make me think of, about
I
coaching, if I as a coach need a coach kind of thing.
yeah. I think that this really just confirms something that I think we both know, is that we become wiser from our struggles than we do our successes.
Mm,
And so I I have over the years I've dealt with a lot of challenges, physically in terms of like being able to compete. There's been a lot of finish lines that I've limped across and things just did not go well. And I think that it has absolutely made me a better coach having gone through those, because now I have something to draw on when my athlete is under a situation that they don't have confidence in. It may not be like the same scenario or same situation, but I think it allows me to have a certain level of compassion or empathy with the athlete and say, look, I understand how this feels. I mean, I'm not saying that I've experienced the exact same thing, but here's something that I've experienced. So if I can get through this, you can absolutely get through this, and we're going to do this together. And this is something that we're chasing after and we're going for it. I would say that I would be a worse coach if every single race that I did went off perfectly. I had perfect execution. I was, super consistent in my training and everything was on target and I made the podium every single time, Kona qualifier and all this kind of stuff. I think I would be a worse coach.
Probably because you'd be like, why, if you just do what I do, you'll always be successful. And people
Yeah, I
don't
think
like
that they're
that,
just
right? Reality is,
they're missing, I think, the emotional side and the compassionate side
I doubt
of
there are
of
people like
coaching.
coaches out there like that. No,
So
you can't always have a perfect race. I mean, there's like, look at
But that's what
me.
athletes are looking for. They're looking for their coaches to have some level of performance and use that as an
Mm,
instrument for
okay.
the quality of their instruction and the
Mm,
quality of their training plans.
right.
Whereas
Okay. I see what you're saying.
that's not necessarily the barometer of a good coach. And you've told me this before. It's not what the performance that you're able to have. It's the performance that you're able to draw out of others is
Right.
what makes you a good coach. Because I've dealt with that same level of insecurity before, where it's just like, I have to perform well so that people think I'm a good coach. And you help me kind of reassure that and say, no, it's not necessarily your performance. It's what can you get others to do? And I
Uh-huh.
think with us both racing still as athletes, I think that there's a little bit, do you think that there's a little bit of that in you? Where if you feel like you don't perform well at a race, that there's some kind of question now that you're more open. I mean, we have the podcast and there's a lot more exposure to us with people that we don't know. Do you think that there's a little bit of that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess people could be like, oh, look, she didn't, perform at grandma's. Like, I'm not going to hire her. So maybe there are some thoughts like that. I mean, I guess like I'm trying to think what if I were looking for a coach, what I would be looking for. And I don't think it would be that they were like the most successful runner necessarily. I guess I
Yeah.
don't have that expectation so much for myself. In fact, I think differently. I kind of think that experience and lived experience of like having some good races and maybe some struggles is what makes a better coach. But maybe not everybody's thinking that way. So that's the way I think. So I'm assuming other people are thinking that way. But um so it wasn't really like something that crossed my mind when I didn't do well. I think it was more like I want to prove, maybe a little bit, like I want to prove that I'm fast, that I can still be fast, that am capable. I know I'm capable of like a 2:55 or maybe even when I was younger, faster in the marathon. I know I'm capable of that. So I want to like prove I'm capable of that to myself and maybe other people who may be doubting. I don't know. There's someone out there really doubting me. I'm not sure. Maybe now people are, but it's like I had a 2:59, it's like close, but I'm like, it's not so much from that perspective. I think it's kind of more from like, I want to prove I can do this, but not because I want to prove that I'm a good coach by it. I mean, I'm sure I'll have more successes. Um, it's not as though it's been a complete loss. Like I've had some really happy fast times in the 5K, and I'm hoping to achieve even more with that. And even taking myself out of the comfort zone of trying something new like high rocks, or continuing with some of the 5K 10Ks and getting speedier, or trying to be speedy as I can for my age. I mean, not that I'm extremely old or anything, but I think there's going to be more races in the future that are going to go well. So
Mm.
if people are judging me off that, I think they should be looking, okay, she's had some really good times and she's had some struggles, and that, maybe makes her a better coach. Because I mean, we're not going to get it as coaches, like things happen to us as well. Like you're saying, it's not like we're in a bubble. I had everything right. It's just that like outside stress is what I'm thinking happened, is like things in life that happen to us that we can't control, anybody, coaches or not, maybe puts us more susceptible, plus high volume training that happens to anybody. And then you get
Yeah.
sick. That's one of the risks of being an athlete and doing high volume training and living life, Yeah, I don't know. I guess somebody could be like, "Oh, well, you're a dietitian. You should be eating healthy. You should never get sick." Like that's if there's someone's expecting me of that of me, like I don't know, then I don't want to be your coach, I guess, because you're expecting too much. Like, even a healthy person gets sick sometimes. I feel like hopefully they want me to coach them because I've had these experiences. And this is just like happens to be the first time that I can remember that I've had such a major setback, other than, when I had Hashimoto's and that diagnosis and that whole overtraining thing. But since then, this is the first time I've had like a huge major setback, and it was a learning experience, and I do think I'm now gonna be a better coach because of it. So hopefully people look more at that than they do at every single race going well, because I think then you're right, somebody's going in that coach, if a coach has, like, had so many great outcomes and they've never really had a major setback or a bad race, then that's what they expect of you then. Kind of, because they're gonna be like, "Oh, you just follow what I've done. Look, I've had all these great performances. I've never had a truly disappointing race. If you just follow the formula, you're gonna have this great race too, because they've never experienced that, so they're gonna expect that you don't either, I guess." And then when you do, I don't know, maybe they're like, "What the heck's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know, but I'm thinking.
Those kind of coaches, I call them training plan coaches, because they're the ones that think that if you just follow the plan, everybody, you would just have success no matter what. Versus a practitioner who actually will coach the athlete and not coach to the plan. So I think that's what the way that I kind of describe those. I think then it's interesting because the conversations that I have with athletes, even as an athlete, where I'm not wearing my coach's hat, I'm just sitting around the table and I'm talking with other athletes, and they'll talk about somebody that they know, and the way that they'll describe them is like, oh, they're fast, they're talented here. Not once have I had a conversation where an athlete has said, do you know this person? They're not the fastest person, but they are the most determined person that I know. They don't perform well, and they may come in the back half of the pack, but they cross that finish line no matter what. And
Mhm.
I've never had one of those conversations. And so I think that there tends to be this thought where people are chasing the performance, because I don't know if they're just looking for validation, or they want to be described as, oh, I know that person, they're really fast.
Right. No.
And I don't know if maybe sometimes this plays into our mental acuity when it comes to the process of training,
Mhm.
and how we execute races. If we show up on race day and the training plan didn't go like we hoped, but we're still chasing that goal that we had when we clicked on the registration button before any training took place, it kind of it makes me question sometimes. And I don't really know where I'm going with this, but it was just something that just kind of popped into my head. It's just how performance seems to be the primary way of describing an athlete rather than their
Yeah.
experience as an
Mhm.
athlete.
Or how
I hope that makes
Yeah,
sense,
I
because
think so.
it makes
Or
sense in
even
my own mind, but I don't know.
how much like how consistent they are, or how they show up even if they're not like the fastest, but they're like put a lot of effort in, and they're not, we're not really people aren't really that's not being like the thing that,
It's not
like, the effort,
observable.
it's not observable first
Yeah,
of all, unless you're posting things all the time, or if somebody maybe
right.
sees it on Strava or something. Wow, they're really consistent and they are really doing a lot and they're putting a lot of effort in, maybe, but it's hard to observe that. So when we have a race, all you're looking at is like who's, what times are people running and who's winning or on the
Mhm.
podium versus who's not. And then the people that aren't, maybe don't have the fastest times or aren't on the podium don't seem to get generally as recognized. Um, Although, sometimes they do, but I think it's definitely so much of the media and so much of the attention is on those faster time, people who are achieving
Yeah.
faster times, and not so much like, oh, this individual has they're finishing and they've done this many races. Or I don't know, like there's no other like recognition for other things that people are doing other than just their time, which I guess makes sense because it's like that's how it's measured, right? This is why I like ultra running a little bit more because it still has a time you're measuring, I guess. Like there are still, and now even more so, but because there's like course records and things. But um there's a little more forgiveness in that in some ways as of the challenge of the terrain and the different factors going into it. It's not like a 5K where you know what your 5K time is unless you've done like a 100-mile race. Like you don't know really what that takes. So sometimes time is a little bit more arbitrary. We have these people, there's a little more emphasis on like the people that are out there, a little bit longer and everybody is kind of I think there's a lot more like excitement even for, like, the pros to come back and, like, cheer on people coming through. There's just the community in ultra running is, I think, be changing. So maybe I sense it's becoming a little bit more like all the other races, which makes me sad, but when I first started to do some ultra marathons and started to dabble in that community a little bit, I had the sense that it was like everybody was sort of cheered on and celebrated for just completing, like, that's a lot to run. And there's so many variables just to get through that. Everybody's celebrated for that in a way. You do have the fast people, but everybody's kind of like, wow, this is a major achievement. And I don't see that so much in like the marathon or, obviously some of the faster, shorter races, I mean. So,
What's kind of sad is that there doesn't seem to be any points for heart. I would say I could say that if I was working with an athlete and we trained well, but we had an issue that happened during the training, and we still wanted to race. So go ahead and race. And they're at the starting line, and then they're off, and they're chasing that performance, and then they get to the halfway point of the race, and they realize that they're not going to hit that performance goal, and then they just bag it. They just say, "No, I'm not gonna finish it. I'm not gonna get the result that I want. Um, I'll just try again another time." Then I have another athlete who has the same scenario. They're on the starting line, they chase the performance and they're off, and then they realize they're not going to hit that goal, but they dig in and they just find it some way, somewhere to get through the race, knowing that they weren't going to get the performance that they wanted, but they had the heart to finish it no matter what, and they finished what they started. To me, I would work with that second athlete any day of the week versus that first one.
yeah, and you're
There,
bringing up an interesting thought for me, just real quick, like thinking about what you're just saying, like, because you're absolutely right. Like somebody who has no context for what happened and what I went through, like with the training for the race, that it didn't go as planned and all of this stuff would look at my time and maybe they've seen other times or they saw that I, last year did a 2:59 or whatever, and they would be like, "Oh, that sucks. She didn't perform very well." Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, somebody might see, like, well, what happened? Kind of making this assumption that I didn't put in the effort, or something happened. Oh, feeling almost like bad for. Oh, well, that sucks for this person because they didn't get the time. Their time was. I mean, that's the time I got was still good. Like, it's not like it wasn't
yeah,
a
it was.
good time. It's just comparable to where I wanted to be and what I could be achieving. Like, yeah, it was not what I set out to do. And if someone's looking at what I was wanting to accomplish and they're like, wow, you really like failed. And that's the thing I think that's sad about it is that you're right. There's no appreciation or thought to like, oh, well, maybe something. What I wonder what happened, and then even seeing what happened in the race, like exactly as you're saying, like I got halfway in or a little over, and I'm like, this isn't happening for me today. And then I stuck it out, like I
Yep.
finished that race, even when there was so many times I was in a lot of discomfort, like I was, and I just kept going, and then
Yeah.
finished it, and and I'm proud of that. So I don't, people don't see that piece of it because it's hard. You can't we just have our times posted, right? That's all it's posted, other than maybe sharing your own story. I think just, like, being out there talking about it and sharing it, that's probably the only way to kinda to do that is, maybe why people post things on social media, and it's not as an excuse, like, I don't also wanna think people to be like, "Oh, I'm just making excuses for I guess it's kind of an excuse, but it's like, I'm not like, I didn't bag the marathon because it wasn't like I was like going to achieve it, and I just like
Yeah.
gave up and I'm like, or whatever. It was like, there's truly no way I was going to achieve that goal. My body was giving up on me, like, just over, like, I was already starting to feel it at like mile 14 or 15. Like, it wasn't going to be my day. I think the telling thing is that I kept going for, I did go for it, but
Yeah.
maybe in retrospect, I should have, like, changed my goal a little bit, but, um, I don't know.
I think what's impressive is that you didn't go into the race already with the excuse of, oh, today is just going to be a training day. Because I hear that
Mhm.
a lot, where it's
Uh-huh.
just like, oh, training
Well,
didn't go very well, so they're not going to get the performance that they want or the performance that they talked about and shared with others on what they wanted to achieve, and then they get to race day and they realize that, oh, something didn't happen, or they weren't consistent with their training or something outside of their control, and so they go into the race already bagging it and just already with the excuses built into it. It's just like, oh, well, if you see my time later, this is why I didn't really race it. I just went in and just went for the completion. That's one of the things that really impressed me with you, is that despite the hurdles that you went through during the training, you showed up on race day willing to execute the plan that would require you to meet the performance goal that you had from the very start, regardless of how training went. I think that says a lot more about you as an athlete than if you would have just gone in and just said, oh, I kind of abandoned my goal because something, happened in training. I think that there can be a time and place for that, but I don't think the situation that you were in was dire enough to where you should have just abandoned your goal. I think it took guts to go ahead and execute that plan and then realize, because I think that you would have had way more regret at the end of the race if you would have just gone in with a revised expectation or a revised goal, because then you would be sitting there thinking, well, could I
right,
have done
yeah,
it?
and I did it, and I knew. That's the
And
thing, yeah, I mean,
now
that's
that you
probably
couldn't
why
have.
I didn't
So
have so many regrets, because I did go in, like, with the full expectation that I was gonna go for it, and then realize, at some point where there was just some physical things happening and mental, and I just was like, "Okay, this is this is not going to happen today." But I went for it, you're right, and I think that's
yep,
probably why I didn't have too many regrets about the actual race, because there wasn't anything. I had my nutrition, I was really hydrating very well. It wasn't even a hot day, and I had ice. They'd hand out ice, and I was, like, holding the ice, I was doing everything
yeah,
right. And I was really focusing on hydration, and I was trying to get my fueling in. It didn't start to unravel until everything else started to unravel, and that's when the nutrition, and not so much the hydration, but the nutrition started to unravel when I started to feel pretty bad, and I
yeah,
was realized I'd maybe overdone it. But it was like, while I was going for it, everything was executed I was executing it as I had planned. So it wasn't nutrition. Like, we're going through all those things of like what's in your control. And I'm like, well, it wasn't the weather, it wasn't the nutrition, it wasn't the hydration. It might have been a little bit the sleep, probably the illness I had. We talked about that. And probably sleep might have affected it. I mean, there's things that were otherwise maybe like slightly out of my control, but a lot of those things, it's just the pacing, but I went for it. I did have those thoughts, like, maybe I need to adjust, like, maybe this is gonna be my day. I'm not sleeping well. I'm worried about it a little bit. I know the training wasn't perfect, but I didn't do that. I did come into the race day, and I did go for it, you know?
yep.
So, I don't think I would have been able to get it. I wasn't going the pace even in the beginning. That would have been, so I adjusted, I guess, slightly, where I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna hang on and try to just get under 2:59 if I can."
I don't think there's anything wrong with doing mid race pivots.
Mhm.
So I
Other
think
than
that
that,
that's
it was like whatever I did to myself
yeah,
pushing so far early, just like going through and finishing like that last 6 miles between, which is generally a hard piece anyways,
yeah,
always is hard in the marathon. This particular one, because I was struggling so badly, was it was like a emotional journey. I don't even know how to describe. I
Mm,
went through like a journey, like some sort of journey of my
yeah.
own in those last 6 miles that I don't think I've ever been through. There's one time I did like a 25-mile trail race that I really wasn't prepared for, and I was crying. Midway, I had an emotion, but it was a very negative experience where I was just like the whole race was a very negative experience for me, and I was crying and shouldn't have done it. I went into it with expectations, outside expectations that I was
Yeah.
anyways, this particular one, it was like in a journey, and I didn't cry during, I cried after I was done, but more because I was just so glad to be finished. But it was like an emotional journey of just like hanging in there, and it was like I was so internally focused on just the next step and moving forward, and it was
Yeah.
interesting. I've never had that sort of experience, I don't think, where I've been just sort of in this pain cave, just trying to get through, which if
Yeah.
like Courtney Dauwalter, the ultramarathon, talks about the pain cave and just like trying to sort of be in it. And I was trying with all my might to just embrace it, and it was hard
Yeah.
because I wasn't really
It's a
embracing
hard
like
place to be.
mental. But it
So,
was like I learned a lot, I think, about myself and what I'm able to push through in those last 6 miles. And that in itself was a learning experience. I think why I wasn't so disappointed because I'm like, "Wow, that was that was something." I don't know. That
yeah.
was something else, but it was like one of those, like, come to Jesus, and I don't know the right word for
Yeah.
it, but it was like, uh, like, wow, like, almost spiritual, but in,
Yep.
like, a painful way, so, yeah. I don't know if anyone ever I don't recommend pushing so hard that you do that, necessarily experience that, but for me, it was definitely, like, some sort of, like, you know, emotional thing I went through there.
I think it's a life-changing event.
Yeah, it
I
was.
really do. I mean, because I experienced the same thing at Florida where it was just I've done a lot of races, and that one, like I said before, it broke me.
Broke.
And it was a place that I needed to go. I didn't want to go,
Right.
because I had gone into this race. And I was like, this is going to be my redemption. I've spent 4 years away from the sport, and now this is my shot back. And it was almost like 3 weeks before the race, and I was on crutches. I was already grieving what I knew was inevitable, that I was not going to have the race that I envisioned just months before. And so I hadn't even gotten to the finish line, and I was already knowing that this is I'm not going to see what it is that I wanted to see,
Mm,
but I had to still find a way to just say, but I'm not giving up. Because
mm,
I think many, I don't want to say maybe many people would have just said, no, I'm not doing that. You're on crutches, the week of your race, and you still go out there and do it. I don't know very many people who would do that, but it was something that I had to do. And, it was something that I had to experience. And as I continue to move forward, I'm drawing on that experience that I had at Florida. And it definitely feeds into this next question that I've got that I want to talk about fairly quickly. Is the idea of the redemption, of the revenge race or the redemption
mhm.
race, because we've all experienced it. I know that I've experienced it before, and I can remember the end of one. I think it was like my first half Ironman, or maybe just a couple of them that I'd done a couple of them, but I didn't have the experience that I wanted to, but I knew I was fit, and I wanted to see that number. I wanted to see it. And so I was reaching out to friends, and I was just like, I didn't have the race that I really wanted, but there's another race that's in 3 weeks. Should I do it? I want to get redemption. I want to get revenge. And they unanimously told me, no, don't do
So
it.
right.
And it begs the question on, when is that redemption race or that revenge race a reasonable and healthy thing to do
Mm,
versus when is it not? So I'm
right.
curious on what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. Um, I think, yeah, like, it kinda goes back to what I was saying before is, like, how you're feeling after. Are you just so ready to be done and you're just signing up because you're angry? Like, I think that's probably where it's not okay. I think
I would
allowing
agree.
yourself to kind of process through some of those emotions, like that you experience around the race, like the frustration, the anger, disappointment, even, maybe there's other emotions, but it's like giving yourself time. I just don't think it's ever good when you're had a really disappointing race to just be like immediately the next day or even that day looking up
Hmm.
races. Well, what can I do? First of all, if you've actually run the race, unless you've totally bagged it, in which case I don't know, like then you didn't even give it a shot. I don't know, like be disappointed for other reasons, I guess, but like you do have to recover. 3 weeks is a little bit too soon, I think, for most situations where it's a really long race, and it's like a 5K
Yeah.
maybe. I think this is really for people who are doing like a 5K, sure, sure, do it again,
Yep.
but for like a longer race where it took that much effort, you've had a huge build, like a marathon, half Ironman, or anything, above, um, in distance, half marathon, maybe a little questionable to do it 3 weeks later, but you probably could bounce into one, and it wouldn't take like a huge toll maybe, but it's really those longer races where there's a lot of takes into the process of it and the execution of it and the actual toll it takes on your body. I would just encourage anyone to take a week or just take a time to
Yep.
process through the emotions. And if you're on the computer looking for races like the very next day, I think you might regret that decision to sign up unless you're truly like chomping at the bit to train, really enjoying the process. You just had a disappointing race, but you're jumping right back in because you're just so excited to keep going. I mean, maybe, but then again, I think look out a ways. Don't do it. Don't do it like 3 weeks. 6 weeks. What I did, and it wasn't even like I wasn't disappointed in New York. In fact, that race was great. I had a good race. I just didn't attain my time goal, but I didn't even know, I was just getting right back into running marathons after not running since 2017. So I was even sure what I was exactly capable of. And I think I was just excited. I'm like, oh, it's so close. Let me try again. So I think it also depends a little bit on how that like is it truly a disappointing race or you're just kind of like, I don't know. But I would give yourself some time. I don't hit that, register button. Like, fine, look up races. If that's how you process it, is kind of like thinking about your next race and you're trying to process it, fine. But don't register. Give yourself a week or so to think about it and process through the race, some time off from running maybe or your sport. And then if you're still really wanting to do it, like and you've had some time to process, maybe do whatever you need to do that helps you process through that, whether it is, doing movement or spending time with family or relaxing or, whatever. And then a week later or 2 weeks later, if you're still like really wanting to do it, sure, I guess do it. Just let yourself process. Don't do it right away. That would be my don't pull the trigger. You know what I mean? Because I think usually what happens, like I said, even I was thinking that like a couple days after, like, oh, maybe I'll do that one. There's one in St. George and George, Utah. That's like kind of a downhill one. And so it's close. I don't have to travel too far. I'm like, maybe I'll do that one in October. There's CIM. I wonder if I can still register for for that one in December. Gives me enough time. But I let myself have those thoughts and kind of like, oh, that's it. Okay, yeah, I'll, I'll think about that. But after a week, I was realizing, like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not ready. So I think we all kind of have those thoughts, but to not pull the trigger, I think. And then for me, I don't know if I'll have a revenge race. Like, I've given this a lot of thought after that race of how I would even approach it next time. And I was talking with Justin a little bit before we started recording. This is the other thing I think is maybe before you decide you're going to do a revenge race of the same exact distance, maybe consider giving yourself a break and focusing on something else for a little while. Like, don't take it, do some, what I mean by that is like, if you're always doing Ironmans, could you focus on something speedier for a while? Really like like an Olympic distance, or like
Yep.
if you're a marathon runner, focusing on the 5K or even getting on the track. I don't know, like do something different for a little while so you can switch it up and give yourself a little bit of break, but you're still training and then go back to it. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I have a mile race. I don't, just based off kind of what I'm experiencing right now, I think it's just going to be more to see like how fast can I run the mile off of not a ton of training. We'll see
Yeah.
how that one goes, but I don't have a lot of pressure for myself for that. And then I'm sort of building into that high rocks, which is like totally out of my wheelhouse. it's nice because I'm doing something totally different. Like the training's going to be different. Like I'm going to still run, but there's going to be some elements that are very different. It's going to be exciting. And then I'm thinking, okay, if I do another marathon, it's not going to be until next year at the earliest. How am I going to
Mhm.
approach it differently? What have I learned from the last few? And I think the one thing I will do differently, I don't know, I'll still think about hiring a coach, but I want to go into it maybe like changing my expectation for mileage and maybe doing a little more cross training
Mhm.
and um kind of going into it where I don't have a time expectation. I'm just going to train and I'm going to do it by RPE more so and still have like some harder training and obviously some of those elements that you want to be able to do to perform. But I'm not just going to like run I'm actually trying to do some workouts and long runs and that kind of thing like I normally would, but I'm going to do it R based on RPE, and then at some point along the way, I'll start to look a little bit more at the times I'm running and formulate my goal, not in the beginning, but sort of in the
Interesting.
middle or at the end.
Yeah.
So I may be surprised, I might be like, wow, like I'm doing really good because I want to really be able to listen to my body. And if I do get sick, not feel like I think that was exactly as you're saying, all that pressure, all that panic I had to be able to have that kind of thing happen and be like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll see because I'll have to analyze how I'm doing, but it's it takes that pressure off the outcome, and instead I can kind of go into it and train and put the effort in, but not be so yeah, just kind of be like, well, whatever it's gonna be. It could be 3:30. My PR days are maybe over, and that's okay. Or maybe I'll surprise myself. I don't know, but I love the process, and I think that this focus I've had, especially after that illness, intense focus on meeting the expectation just took the fun out of it. And I just don't want to fall into that trap again. So I don't know when that's going to be, but this is how I'm going to approach it differently. And I kind of feel like maybe other people should, unless you're like a professional runner and you have to kind of focus a little more on your outcome. And maybe that is a good way to do it. I don't know. I'll have to see see how it all shakes out for me. But I don't want to be. I don't. I'm sick of like being so focused on. I've got to be. I've got to have a PR. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm
I
gonna.
like
Yeah, that's where I'm at
I
now.
like that shift of focus
Mhm.
from an outcome driven perspective to a process oriented perspective. I like that. I like that shift, and it's something that I use in my own training. I've kind of abandoned the outcome focus and found that I enjoy training more when I have a process oriented view on training rather than an outcome driven view where I'm
Mhm.
chasing something. I find that I enjoy training much better. I enjoy race day much better. And then sometimes I surprise myself where,
Right. That's what
I,
I'm
I
hoping.
show up on race day and it's just like, wow, that materialized. And there was no focus on training to hit a particular outcome, but the outcome
Yeah.
showed up because I committed to the process. And that's something that I try and work with my athletes
Yeah.
on is let's just focus on the process.
You have to look at what you're doing to have some sort of idea of what sort of I mean, I guess you could just go into it and totally be it based off RPE, but not even
That's what
looking
I
at a
do. Yep.
watch. Like
Yep.
I'm not sure I'm there yet. Like I don't know. I'm like somewhere in the middle. Like, I'm like where I'm at is I want to just kind of start the training plan and really just focus on the process and like RPE base instead of like, oh, I've got to hit this time for this workout. Just kind of like how I'm feeling and um, I might look a little bit at time, but I'm not gonna have that be, like, the focus because it's hard not to, But I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, I have to hit this time," like, just more of an observer of the pace, but not so much like I have to hit a pace. And then at some point, maybe 8 weeks out or far enough out that I can kind of but not too far, maybe even
Yeah.
closer, looking at the times I'm running and kinda, like, doing more analysis of that and actually sort of starting to focus more and then sort of seeing what am I able to maybe achieve and then having some sort of oh well wow I'm doing so good I might be able to kind of go for a sub 3 again or okay like I'm doing oh maybe this is like a 3:10 sort of pacing being okay with however it comes out. I think the problem I'm gonna have is that whenever that happens is going into the race, and I still have to deal with, especially if it is like I'm anywhere close to a PR, I still have to deal with that pressure and that the build up into the race. There's still that piece that that I guess you wouldn't have to deal with if you're just going based off of RPE and you're not looking at pace at all, which is freeing. So I don't know. I think that's kind of I have to deal with that when I rode a bridge when I have to cross it, but
Yeah.
I um I think that's kind of what I'm thinking, at least something like that. But just approaching it very differently and approaching the training a little bit differently. I feel like there's so much talk about volume, and the thing is, like, I've been doing volume. Like, my whole life I've been running. I've accumulated a lot of like miles on my legs. I just am like, I get it. Like, you can't go and run a 30 miles a week and run fast. You can do it and train and you can finish a marathon okay, but you can't really do that and do like a sub 3 unless you're maybe an elite runner or something. So, I have to do some level of something. But I think what it's like, but I don't know. I don't think I'm one of those people that does really great off of more and more and more volume. I don't think that's helping me. At some point, there's a ceiling. I kind of hit that. You know what I mean? So now it's like I got to think of other ways to maybe get some sort of simulate some volume without the wear and tear on my legs. And then I do go back to when I was doing that ultra marathon that I had so much success in, the Run Rabbit Run, and I'm like, I was doing a lot more like CrossFit style workouts and doing. I know it's 50 miles is totally different than a marathon, but I'm like, I don't know. I felt really good when I was doing that and combining that and less and not volume. I wasn't running like what normal ultra runners run, and so I'm almost thinking maybe I just need a little bit of a different type of stimulus, not totally different, but just something a little bit different. So I'm gonna experiment a little bit maybe, um, and just make it fun and keep it interesting.
When it comes to the revenge race or the redemption race, what I tend to tell my athletes and what I do myself is that we're not looking at races for at least 7 days. And then I ask the question, why do you want to race? And
Right.
so if you're just sitting there and you're just looking through races, I recommend that you ask yourself, why do I want to do this? And if the answer is you want a particular outcome, then take a closer look, and I would advise to reconsider. If the answer to that question is I love this process. I miss the training, so I want to continue the training. I love the structure. I just want to get better. Then, to me, I think that is a reasonable and valid decision on whether to race sooner rather than kind of just deloading or whatever. That's
I
what I
agree.
tend to do with my
Yeah.
athletes. So
Yeah, I agree.
it helps protect them from bad impulsive decisions. Um,
You sign up for something too soon, and then you're kind of disappointed again, potentially,
yeah.
because you didn't allow yourself time to recover. Your heart wasn't in it. So it's hard to do the training and really put in the effort when you're not enjoying the process. So I think that sort of puts you in a situation to maybe be disappointed again and kind of go through. I've talked with people who've kind of done that where they're like constantly chasing something, like they're constantly doing the marathon again and again and again, and they're sort of like doing the same process each time or the same training plan even, and they're not really switching it up or thinking about it like, okay, how could I implement this differently or better? And it's like, well, they have the same outcome every time, or they're not able to like achieve better, or whatever, if that's their goal is to get better or faster. Because they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, essentially. They're perpetually in this cycle, and I also want to encourage people to think about that. Like, have you been chasing this? Like, that's kind of where I think I've been a little bit. Like, okay, now I've done, and I have had some success. I'm not saying, but it's like it's been 4 marathons, and I just can't seem to be able to cross this barrier that I'm looking to cross. How many more times am I going to keep doing the same
Mhm.
process and achieving this similar result? And it's fine if I get a similar result, but maybe I've changed the process or the way I'm approaching it is differently. But I feel like I've changed some of my training, but I kind of keep doing something similar each time. And so I'm ready to just take a break and then maybe try it again differently. So I'd encourage people to kind of think about that too, is if you're going to do it again, kind of having these and you're never quite satisfied with your result, you keep kind of signing up again to, and you're almost in this cycle, which I think some people are, to take a break, do something different, and then come at it in a different way. So try something different.
Like we've said before, that fatigue is cumulative, but so is
Mhm.
disappointment
Right.
and
Yeah.
discouragement. So if you're just chasing race after race, looking for a better outcome, or you're chasing something like that, just know that every single time that you finish off a race and you're disappointed, that sticks with you a little bit longer, and it accumulates more and more and more. And I found that when I work with athletes that have that mindset, their longevity in the sport is in question. They don't stick around. They'll find something else to do, because eventually they just say, well, what's the point of doing this? I'm never able to see the result that I want to see. Even though they may be good results, they're not what they want, and so they'll just go find something else. So that's not what I want for them as a coach,
Mhm.
or just for the health of the sport in general. So
And you want people to achieve what they want, but sometimes it I think it's like, what's the definition of insanity? Like doing something anyway,
doing the same thing
over
over and over
over
and
and over again,
expecting
and
different results.
so you start to go a little insane with that, right? So it's
Yeah.
just something to think about. I think people, kind of thinking about that if you're in that sort of cycle too, to figure out, maybe how to break that a little bit so you can enjoy it, and all you're really thinking about is that outcome and that time or whatever it is. Thinking
Yeah.
about something you can do to make it more enjoyable, the process, and what you get out of the sport. Yeah, like kind of that why again. What are you getting? Like, what are you getting from it that does nothing to do with the time you achieve? How is it helping you, or how is it
Right.
adding to your life, or how do you feel better about yourself because you're out there every day training, and how is that adding to your life? And it should be something a little more meaningful, I think, than just, I've got to have this time, or I want people to think I'm fast or something.
Yeah, I also want to
Mhm.
reference another episode that we did. Is your race ruined after missing training? How to adjust after a setback. So this kind of ties into this conversation a little bit. We talk about your illness in that episode, I feel. But it's episode 91, where we talk about how to adjust your training plan going forward, or how to deal with setbacks. So if you want a little bit of a deeper look into kind of the foundation of this episode, some of these episodes that I've mentioned before kind of lay the foundation for what it is that we're talking about today. So if you want to go back and check out those other episodes,
Mhm.
it might shed some additional light. But I think that this wraps us up. So this has
Yeah.
been a really great conversation. I've really enjoyed having this one. I like these coaches corners because they're a little bit less structured.
And they're more like
Is that
like we're diving, almost being a
Yeah,
little more
this is a lot
vulnerable in
more of a
that.
vulnerable episode where we just kind of just talk. And there are points that we're trying to make, but it's really kind of just an introspective. It forces me to look inward and say, okay, how is it that I really feel, and what are some of the experiences that I've had, and what can I share with others that may be useful to them. But I really enjoy these conversations, so thank you, Katie, for that.
Yeah.
So this has been episode 110 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, where we talk today about how to deal with a disappointing race, what to do next, how to look at that experience and either build on it or use it as a foundation to try something new. It doesn't mean that you don't ever come back, because you can absolutely do that, and there's nothing wrong with trying to find other things that may spark your interest and leverage some of the fitness that you've accumulated, and you just try something different. What I've learned is that my passion grows deeper when I take breaks like that. So if I take a break and then I focus on something else, then when it comes time to come back, I'm way more passionate, I'm way more determined and motivated, and it's a reignition of the fire that's inside. So that's one of the things that I would like to depart and to leave you guys with. So there's nothing wrong with trying something new. So do our typical housekeeping. So if you have found this episode where it kind of spoke to you, it resonated with you, or if you know somebody else who's going through this process and you think it would help them, I hope that you will consider leaving a comment, leaving a review for the episode, and sharing the episode with whoever you think it would be helpful for. Those are greatly appreciated. I thank you guys so much for the reviews and comments that you are leaving. There's also on the YouTube channel as well, we post a video of all the episodes. You can leave comments and reviews there and subscribe as well, because we're on all the major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. We do not monetize this podcast. So we don't have sponsors. We don't have ads and commercials. We just come to you the whole time, not connected to anybody else that drives the conversation. I'm not trying to sell you hemp mattresses and supplements. So these comments and reviews really, really help us way more than you would think that they do, because the more comments and reviews it gets, the more it gets returned in the algorithm to help others find the podcast. So it only takes a couple seconds just to click on however many stars that you think it's worth. Just a simple comment. Hey, it was great. Enjoyed the content. Keep it coming, kind of stuff. Those are really, really appreciative, and they help us greatly. So I hope that you guys will consider that. And if you've done it, thank you so much. We also have the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group. It's a private group that's on Facebook. We started it from day one. We wanted to build a community that allows us to connect with the listeners and have listeners be able to directly connect with us. We find that is really important for the growth and the health of the podcast, as well as the growth of people that we're trying to help. I mean, it goes way beyond just like podcast episodes. So this is a community that we would like to continue to foster and grow. So all you do is you just you search on Facebook, it's the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group. You answer one simple question and you agree to the group rules, and it lets you right on in. Thank you so much if you consider doing that. We also pinned a poll in that podcast group where we asked you guys if you found these race builds or these introspective looks at some of our races. We've dedicated podcast episodes to those. So if you go back and you'll find the IRONMAN Florida 70.3 documentary that I put out. You also have Katie's Grandma's Marathon build. All those are just their solo episodes. If you find those episodes helpful and you enjoy them, please register your vote in that podcast group and tell us, if you want us to continue to do episodes like that, and why you like them, or if you don't like them, let us know that too. So we want to bring you material and content that is helpful to you and that you enjoy. So let us know what you think. We're also active coaches, so we're bringing on athletes onto our rosters. And so if you're looking for help in your journey, if you're tired of trying to figure out what workouts you should be doing, how many you should be doing, what's the intensity mixture that you should be doing, how many times should I be running, how many times should I be cycling? I don't know really how to swim well, so all I do is I just go in and just swim straight. But I need some help to try and develop that. I hope that you will consider one of us as your coaches. At least have a conversation.
I don't do swimming, but
No. I'm getting there. So if you're looking for dietetic support for any sport, or if you're looking for run coaching, that would be one-on-one custom coaching or training plans, you can reach out to Coach Katie at fuel2run.com. If you're looking for multi-sport or single sport training plans, you can reach out to me, Coach Justin, at tabularasaracing.com. I do custom plans as well as one-on-one custom coaching on a month-to-month basis. So we hope that you will reach out and at least ask us a few questions, see if we'd be a good fit for you, because the athlete-coach relationship is way more than just training plans and races. We're on a journey together, and so we want to make sure that it's a good fit and that we can at least talk to you on how we can help. What else do we have? I think that covers it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the extent of the housekeeping. So I'm going to let you guys go. So this has been episode 110 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I've been your host, Coach Justin, along with Coach Katie, and we thank you guys for the continued support and continuing to listen to us. And we'll come back to you again next week with another new topic. Until then, happy training, everyone, and we'll talk to you again next time. All right. Bye-bye. That wraps up today's episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Endurance sports have a way of teaching us patience, humility, and resilience, lessons that carry far beyond the workout. Progress in endurance sports doesn't come from shortcuts. It comes from consistency, discipline, and doing the work when it's not glamorous. Wherever you are on your endurance journey, keep trusting the process and honoring the work you put in each day. If today's episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone to help on their endurance journey. Don't forget to join the conversation on our social sites to help build and foster a community where we all learn and support one another. We'll be back with more stories and insights from Coach Justin and Katie. Until then, visit the podcast website at theenduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com for more episodes from the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Feel free to send us an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.